Hello again, everybody. Welcome to episode 32 of Driver Suit Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. I'm back to normal this week, and after a slew of techno problems that's had me pulling out what's left of the hair out of my head, I can say that most, if not all, of the technical issues that have been plaguing me over the last few weeks have been fixed. I am now at full throttle, and we can go back to doing things the way they are without me being grouchy, at least for the time being. So we're going to start with a piece of news. I'm going to do a couple news stories this week, and then we're going to figure out something different for next week because I'm getting tired of doing it this way. But anyway, so the news stories I actually wanted to do are sort of playing out, and I haven't really gotten anything definitive after following them, so I'll cover them in a little bit. For this week, I will discuss something that happened in July, and I really actually did want to cover this more, but I had too many news stories to just give this the attention and the what's the word I'm looking for here, the analysis I think it deserves. So, as we all know, on July 23rd, Kurt Busch suffered a very hard crash at Pocono and was pulled from the car due to quote-unquote concussion-like syndromes. And as of the recording of this podcast, he's still on the shelf as a direct result of that crash. So, as a direct result of this incident, Ty Gibbs had to be called in to replace Kurt Busch since they're both in the Joe Gibbs Racing umbrella. So, Gibbs took over driving duties of the number 45 McDonald's Toyota. Now, Gibbs and 2311 Racing have a technical partnership, and Ty Gibbs was the best driver available at the time to take over the number 45. Now, while both drivers are also sponsored by Monster Energy, this was not the case at Toyota. Busch was driving a McDonald's Toyota, so Ty Gibbs had to make his Cup Series debut wearing Kurt Busch's fire suit, which appears to be very ill-fitting, since there wasn't time to adjust it, and I'll get back to this in a little bit. He also borrowed a pair of Denny Hamlin shoes. For making his last-minute Cup debut in a car that was not set up for him and wearing an ill-fitting suit, Gibbs actually did pretty well considering finishing 16th. It should be noted he originally finished 18th, but after both Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch were disqualified for the illegal tape, which we discussed a few weeks ago, he was moved up to 16th in the final standings. Now, this is the idea of a replacement driver wearing an injured driver's fire suit is not unheard of, and it's not like we haven't seen it before. In 2015, when Matt Crafton replaced Kyle Busch for the 2015 Daytona 500, he was wearing Kyle Busch's M&M fire suit. What had happened was Kyle suffered a broken leg during the Alert Today Florida 300 Xfinity Series race, and there was apparently a seamstress, who's a fire suit seamstress, or whatever the term is, and they found this person, and this person made the needed adjustments for Matt Crafton to compete in his first and only Daytona 500, where he finished 18th. Now, I had a couple of conflicting opinions on this, because I see things from both sides, or at least I try to. On the one hand, I understand that, these companies are spending lots and lots and lots of money on these sponsorships, and as a direct result, they want as much exposure for their company logos as possible. There are even scientific research studies at the end of the year about which drivers get the most exposure over the course of the season in terms of sponsors. So, in that regard, the idea of a driver wearing another driver's fire suit in case of emergency does make sense from that particular angle. However, there's another angle to this. For a driver like Matt Crafton or Ty Gibbs, when they start a Cup Series at the last minute, they find out not even 12 hours before they're supposed to get in the car and race, wouldn't it be better to let him wear his own fire suit? Because they are getting thrown in they are literally getting thrown off the deep end. Their mindset was, okay, my weekend is over. I'm going to prepare for whatever. Now they're getting into a car that they have no practice in. It's not set up for them. There may be time to adjust the seats. I don't know 100% sure about what the rules are. But it's going to be a challenge to race a 500-mile race in a car that's not set up for you, maybe in a seat that's not set up for you, when you haven't had that mindset all weekend. Wouldn't it be better for him just to wear his own fire suit for one race? Let him have at least that little bit of consistency. Again, I understand the whole, we want our logos to be visible as much as possible, but at the same time, this is not a planned situation. This isn't even like a driver getting changing drivers midway because he's injured or his wife goes into labor or some kind of emergency happens. This is literally wreck, injury, we have to find a replacement driver. Just let him wear his fire suit for one particular race. It's not going to make that much of a difference in terms of exposure. And again, while the two drivers in these situations have done reasonably well, I do think it is kind of nearsighted to just expect. I mean, what if it was like a driver who's 5'6" replacing Michael Waltrip, who's like, what, 6'5"? What would happen in that situation? Racing, and to be honest with you, part of the reason I think this way is because I've met a few race car drivers. I've interviewed a few race car drivers. They're control freaks. They also, but while they have a good job of compartmentalizing, don't really want to do that if you don't have to. I mean, racing is one of the few sports, if not the only sport, where you can get crushed to death and burned to death at the exact same time. So why not get rid of that particular X factor and let them just race? I mean, I understand both sides, but I can understand why both sides aren't a perfect fit either. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about we're going to go off topic, but at the same time on topic, so we'll be right back. And we're back. So as I said, we're going to go a bit off topic, but it actually in a weird way does relate to the Chicago street race. And it'll make sense, just bear with me. So on Saturday, the Chicago Bears held their first preseason game against the Kansas City Chiefs at Soldier Field in Chicago. Now, for reasons that have never been fully explained, Soldier Field uses Kentucky bluegrass, as does Wrigley Field and Guaranteed Rate Field, which are all located in Chicago. Interestingly enough, the services at the baseball parks is almost always in great condition, whereas the field service in Soldier Field is normally very bad. Now, the field conditions were particularly bad for this particular game, as most Bears games at Soldier Field tend to be, but there were previous events that have left numerous divots and areas of missing grass on the field. It was a bad game even by Soldier Field standards. The condition of the field was so bad that the NFL Players Association president J.C. Tretter actually was calling for the NFL to review what should constitute an appropriate playing surface. In a tweet Saturday, Tretter stated, quote, "The NFL said that this field met minimum testing standards. We clearly need to reevaluate what is an acceptable surface for players to compete on. We need new testing metrics looking at the performance and safety of every field. The NFL can and should do better." If this field, the way it was on Saturday, met the minimum standards, then I agree with Tretter that the minimum needs to be increased. Because that would be unacceptable for a high school football game, never mind an NFL game with one of the league's best quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes. The field even before this took place, the Chicago Fire, who also play their games at Soldier Field, announced that they were moving their August 21st game to nearby SeatGeek Stadium in Bridgeview, Illinois. Quote, due to the expected field condition at Soldier Field from a series of planned events at the venue. This is a huge part of the reason the Bears are looking to relocate to the former Arlington International Racecourse in Arlington Heights, Illinois. Because Soldier Field is a dump of a stadium, their grounds crew sucks, and I can't even say it's beginning to outlive its usefulness. It's very quickly outliving its usefulness. But where this factors into the Chicago street race is as follows. This whole situation is a symptom of a bigger problem, namely using a publicly owned building of any kind in Chicago. When it comes to the city of Chicago, when things clearly aren't working, they just stay that way. I mean, everyone knows the turf at Soldier Field has been an issue for decades, yet the city never does anything to address it. Everyone with a pair of eyes and a functioning brain, especially the people in charge, can clearly see what's going on, but they clearly also see that it isn't working, and they don't make plans to change. If this was a private sector job with these kinds of problems and nothing ever done to fix it, many times, the person in charge is getting fired. Now, how does this factor into the Chicago street race? Well, it adds another reason onto my growing list of concerns as to why this won't work out long term. If the race doesn't work out well the first time, do you honestly think the city of Chicago and those in charge will make the needed changes? No. They're not going to discuss it. They're not going to have meetings on it. They're not going to make the changes. The way I can think of to describe some of the ways Chicago deals with things is it has a very if it's not broke, don't fix it approach, regardless of how broken it obviously is. And we could talk about a lot of things in Chicago that aren't being fixed or only fixed due to lawsuits. Now, a lot of people in Chicago are questioning Lori Lightfoot on her decision to make this because you have a lot of people, especially city officials, and they're worried about how having Lollapalooza and NASCAR so close together would impact the downtown area as a whole. Now, I only thought that these would be closed for like maybe Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but from what I've been hearing, you're pretty much talking about 10 to 12 days continuous of street closures. I apologize for being wrong on that. I honestly thought that they would have figured out a way to do this, but again, Chicago. So Lori Lightfoot, being who she is, stated, well, the city will work with organizers from NASCAR as it does with Lollapalooza to minimize the inconvenience for drivers and tourists. I don't quite know how you can possibly do that, but she also states that the benefits to the city outweigh the downsides. Now, Lollapalooza, that's one thing. Everyone knows it's going to sell out. Everyone knows it's going to make money. Everyone knows it's going to be successful. So it doesn't really qualify in that respect. But if you're really going to knock out a decent chunk of the downtown area of a major metropolitan market for something that is really nothing more than an unproven experiment, how is that a benefit? Believe me, anyone who's been to downtown Chicago knows how bad traffic is, how bad parking is, how congested everything is, and that's without anything going on. This is going to cause just absolute gridlock and havoc. And I want to see this work out. And I know that I've made it seem as though I want this to fail. Actually, I don't. I would love for it to succeed, but I'm not the kind of guy who's going to look at a situation and just agree with the positives blindly. I'm not a yes man. I've worked in various jobs over the years, and all of them I've been at various points presented with an obviously flawed plan, and the people above me expect me to act like it would work perfectly with no flaws. Yet, in my experience, every single one of these flawed plans have failed for the obvious reasons. I would like the Chicago street race to succeed. Looking at this objectively, however, the reality is this probably isn't going to work out. You've got too many moving parts, too many variables, and this is also uncharted waters for both NASCAR and Chicago. I want this to work out. I just realistically can't say that it will. Now, if anybody is wondering if I'm going or not, the answer is very simple. Somebody gives me a free ticket to the race, I'm going, but there is no way in hell I am paying the amount of money, any amount of money, to go down to downtown Chicago for that particular race. And that's another thing. If NASCAR and Chicago have brains in their heads, the tickets will be affordable. Have ticket prices reasonable, get as many people in the door as you can, and maybe this will work. But I have a feeling they're not going to do it because, again, profits over people is how Chicago's been for many years. But if they charge hard prices for something like this, don't expect a lot of people to go. You're trying to turn Chicago into a NASCAR. You're trying to give Chicago a fan base. Make the tickets affordable to build the fan base. I don't see this working out long term. I want it to work, but I just cannot force myself at this juncture to say that it's going to work 100%. Okay, I've ranted about this enough. I'm getting tired of it. I'm going to talk about some odd NASCAR memorabilia in my collection next week. I'm Dave Firestone. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and see you next week for episode 33.